10 spine-chilling Alaskan horror stories exposed. Discover the haunted and sinister secrets. In the heart of Willow Creek, the snow fell like confetti, drowning the world in white. But on this chilling winter evening, the cheer that usually accompanied such a sight was losing its grip, slipping into darkness. In the cozy glow of the Mitchell family kitchen, Sarah Mitchell's heart stuttered as her husband, Jake, called with a voice steeped in desperation. "Sarah, something's out there, something unnatural," he gasped. The unmistakable crackle of fear froze the air between them, as if the warmth of their home was made of ice. "What do you mean?" she asked, clutching the phone like it was a lifeline, her pulse dancing in her throat. Outside, the world was eerily still, nothing moved but the snowflakes, and then she heard it. A soft rustle, distant and low, like someone was whispering in the shadow of the trees. Just as she hung up the phone, the kitchen light flickered. Heart pounding, Sarah gathered Lily and Ben, their faces pale and wide-eyed. She stepped outside, the crunch of snow beneath her boots breaking the silence like a startled response. The wind whipped at her cheeks, and glancing down, she saw the symbols carved into the untouched snow, the unmistakable marks of the Yukon Ripper. As her breath caught, a sudden gust threw shadows against the house, almost beckoning her back inside. Unnerved, she noticed her neighbors' windows glowing dimly. Yet their faces were not the friendly ones she knew. Cold eyes stared at her from behind frosty panes, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something dark. "They're just tired," she muttered to herself, trying to assuage the growing unease, but as she turned back toward the warmth of home, Sarah felt a heaviness in the air, a pulse of dread thrumming at her core. The story said the Ripper was more than just a myth, a specter born from twisted tales. It thrived on fear and pain. She felt it, lingering in the corners of her mind, like a presence waiting to swallow her whole. Suddenly, the phone vibrated in her pocket. An urgent text from Jake, filled with panic. "Get out. Now." Her heart raced faster, a drum echoing in her ears. She dashed inside, slamming the door behind her, pushing back against the chilling whispers and shadows clawing at her sanity. But the tension in the air thickened, suffocating her, making the world feel smaller, more oppressive. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every creak of the floor, Sarah felt the walls closing in, hostility pulsing against her skin. And then it happened, the scream. It sliced through the quiet, raking through her veins. It wasn't just a sound, it was raw fear, a primal holler that couldn't belong to any animal of this world. Panic surged, mixing with the unholy dread nesting in her gut. She couldn't shake the envelope she'd seen earlier, addressed to Jake, heavy with secrets and lies that could unravel everything. Did he know something? As dread closed around her like a vice, she stood at the threshold of an unknown nightmare. The danger was either out there, or worse, rooted in their home and family tree. Shadows danced around her, but who was the true predator? As the echoes faded, Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself against the cold truth dawning in her mind. She had to choose, trust the hints weaving through the gruesome past or risk everything for a life they once knew. The air inside the house had turned electric, charged with a sinister energy that made Sarah's skin prickle. She held Lily and Ben close, their tiny bodies trembling against her. They needed Jake. Where was he? Goosebumps traveled up her arms as another scream pierced the night, more distant this time, yet closer in her mind. Had it come from the woods? That shack at the edge of their property loomed in her thoughts, a place they always joked held too many family secrets. But now, the shadows lining the windows of their neighbors' homes felt less like mundane night retreats and more like watchers, waiting patiently for something to unfold. "Stay here," she whispered, pressing the kids into a corner of the living room, where the dim light of a flickering lamp fought the ever-present darkness. The quiet tension weighed down on her as she inched toward the front door, her heart thundering like a relentless drum. She needed answers, or at least reassurance. The front door creaked open with a low moan, revealing the white shroud of snow, now marked with those terrible symbols. Her breath hitched at the sight of something dark around the edges, something disturbed. The wind tugged at her clothes, almost urging her to follow the sounds buried in the night. "Jake!" She called out, but the wind swallowed her voice. No response. She took a hesitant step outside, the cold biting at her cheeks, and strained her ears for a reply. The trees loomed like sentinels, shadows shifting ominously behind them. She scanned the woods, plunging deeper into the anxious atmosphere of uncertainty. As she turned to head back inside, the door slammed shut an angry gust of wind. The deafening bang echoed through her thoughts. She twisted around, panic seizing her heart as she tugged at the knob, but it wouldn't budge. "No, no, no!" she whimpered, pushing harder as dread climbed up her throat. The house now stood like a prison. Frantically, she searched for windows, but every single one felt locked tight, the icy glass fogging with her breath. "Lily! Ben!" she called, the feeling of isolation growing. And then she saw it, a shadow moving against the trees, a figure hunched and unnatural. Fear gripped her heart, leaching warmth from her veins. Memories of the whispers swept back, tales of the Ripper and his hunger for fear. This couldn't be happening. It was just a story, right? But as the figure moved closer, she knew she was wrong. She took a step back and collided with the wall, trapped between the encroaching darkness outside and the suffocating walls of her home. In her heart, dread morphed into something darker, a realization of their family's hidden truths. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. It was Jake, frenzied words flooding the screen. "You need to listen. Trust no one." The blood drained from her face. Who was in danger? Was it her? Was it him? She glanced back toward the window, instinctively searching for the shadow. There it was, watching. Those cold eyes locked onto hers, devoid of humanity. Something primal surged inside her. Whatever was tearing through her family had bent the most innocent into hunting beasts. She couldn't succumb to fear, not now. The envelope, the neighbors, the histories she dared not recall, it all tumbled like a cascade of horrors that trapped them. As the gut-wrenching realization landed, like an icy stone in the pit of her stomach, a new scream shattered the night, a scream that sent the nightmare spiraling deeper. Her heart raced. The decision loomed. Would she confront the shadows lurking in her past, risking everything to save her family, or attempt to shut the door on the terror, hoping it would keep the monster at bay? The figure shifted again, the twisted grin glimmering in the moonlight. And as she braced herself against the walls closing in, she saw the dark truth awaiting her step into the unknown. As the figure loomed closer, Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps. The giggles of Lily and Ben were a distant memory, replaced by the chilling weight of reality closing in. Each step the shadow took seemed to stretch time, grinding it to an agonizing crawl. She forced herself to focus, to think. Just then, in a moment of sheer desperation, her phone vibrated again. Another message from Jake. "The shack, it's not just a joke. It's real. Don't go there." The words burned into her mind, blending with the icy dread hanging in the air. She felt a pull, an invisible thread tying her to that forsaken place. Could the answer to her family's plight be hidden among its dark corners? The shadow drew closer, now discernible. The hunched form had a face, twisted with anguish and hunger. It was both familiar and alien, as if it wore a mask of someone she once knew. Panic clawed at her throat, but the thought of leaving Lily and Ben unprotected in the locked room turned her blood to ice. Out of instinct, she fished for the kitchen knife resting in the knife block. Its cool handle gave her a semblance of strength. "Lily! Ben!" she shouted, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I need you to stay quiet and close. No matter what happens, don't move. Their wide-eyed stares were like a mirror reflecting her own terror. She couldn't break now. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped toward the door again, grappling with the frosty knob. She twisted it with all her might, heart thudding violently against her ribs. The door swung open. The night was eerily silent for a moment, a deep breath before the storm. She stepped outside, the bitter chill biting her skin, but adrenaline pulsed fiercely in her veins. The dark figure was gone. "Jake!" She called out, her voice trembling as her eyes darted through the shadows. No sign of him anywhere, but the oppressive weight of something unseen pressed against her. What if he was caught in this monstrous grasp? A crack echoed in the distance, like a bone snapping, followed by another scream far more desperate this time. It surged from the shack. Against all instincts for self-preservation, Sarah felt the pull grow stronger, the need to uncover the truth outweighing her urge to run. Shuffling lightly, she crept towards the dark silhouette of the shack, the wind whispering a warning that brushed against her ears. With each step, the air thickened, churning under a vicious spiral of doubt. Shadows danced around her, a mockery of safety, teasing her intentions. Suddenly, the door of the shack creaked open slowly, an inviting crash of darkness that beckoned her inside. And then she heard it, a low, guttural growl, echoing from within the walls, sounding far too hungry for comfort. "Jake!" she exclaimed, fear clenching her throat, pushing every ounce of courage to the edge. No response. With her heart hammering wild beats against her chest, she stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind her. An icy breath washed over her, as though the shack itself had exhaled, holding its secret deep within. Inside, the walls were thicker than she'd imagined, they felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. Flickering candlelight illuminated strange markings, too familiar and too archaic. They were the same as the ones etched into the snow outside. With trembling hands, she raised the knife, feeling the weight of her family's fate resting on her fragile shoulders. Each step was a terrifying journey towards whatever lay in the shadows ahead. And when she turned the corner, everything inside her shattered as she encountered the unspeakable truth. A sinister laugh echoed through the shack, sending chills down her spine. She wasn't alone anymore. The darkness shifted, and she realized the shadows were moving closer, alive with intent. What were they waiting for? What did they want from her? The answer pulsed in the air, heavy with portent, as Sarah stood at the precipice of truth and terror. The air turned thick and suffocating as she gripped the knife tighter, her knuckles whitening. The shadows were shifting, writhing in the candlelight, revealing shapes distorted by malevolence. Sarah's heart raced. She was teetering on the edge of sanity, her mind screaming to flee, but her body felt pinned to the spot. She had to know, she had come too far to turn back now. "Who's there?" she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. The laughter echoed again, as chilling as a winter wind cutting through flesh. It was a sound charged with mockery, a taunt wrapped in dread. Shadows ebbed and flowed, revealing fleeting glimpses of twisted faces, their wide, hungry grins made for terror. "Leave!" one shrieked, a voice as sharp as glass, slicing through the dim air. It slithered around her, wrapping her in a cold embrace of impending doom. "No! I want to go!" Sarah shouted back, surprising herself with a flicker of defiance. The darkness pulsed, and she was reminded of the figure she had seen outside. The familiar yet alien face whispered through her memory, threatening to spill the secrets she longed to forget. Jake's warning echoed in her head, but what if the truth lay buried in this darkness? As she took a hesitant step forward, the shadows recoiled, pressing against the walls, retreating as if her resolve had a tangible power. There was a corridor beyond the flickering light, a tunnel draped in darkness and shadow. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to move, each step heavy with impending dread. The growl from earlier deepened, vibrating through the floorboards and making her bones ache. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a movement, a figure darting between the shadows. Was it Jake? "Jake!" she cried, desperation spilling out of her mouth like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea, but the only reply was a cacophony of whispers, 1,000 voices merging into one, revealing secrets that should have remained buried. Join us, they beckoned, laced with promises and threats. Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of her children, Lily and Ben, trapped in that room alone. The weight of their safety flew in sharp contrast to the gloom surrounding her. She couldn't let whatever this was claim her as well. "I'll find you, Jake. I swear," she yelled, feeling the courage swell within her. Lighting another candle, its flame shook like her spirit, but it illuminated the path before her, chased away the creeping darkness momentarily. Then she saw at the altar. Scribbled runes spiraled around the base, drenched in a thick, dark fluid that glistened under the candlelight. The air hung heavy with a metallic scent, memories flooding back, Jake's voice warning her of ancient rituals, sinister acts from long ago. Something deep within urged her to step back, but her curiosity clawed at her, pulling her forward. Was this place a trap set by the shadows, or a gateway to the truth she needed? A jarring crack split the tension, and the ground shuddered beneath her feet. The walls seemed to breathe, sighing with the weight of the past. Time felt suspended, the shadows thickening in anticipation. They were growing restless. Then a new voice emerged from the depths, smooth and seductive. "Come closer, Sarah. We know what you seek and we can offer what you desire." Her heart thrummed violently in her chest, doubt creeping in, wrestling with her desperation. What did they know? What dark promise lay just beyond her reach? She stood frozen, the knife trembling in her grip, knowing that whatever truth awaited on the other side of the altar could either save her or destroy everything she held dear. As the shadows danced around her, she knew she faced a choice: risk it all to uncover the truth or turn back into the haunted night. After all, what could possibly come next in this twisted realm of despair? Would uncovering the reality pull her family from the brink, or would it be the very thing that cursed them all? Sarah's pulse quickened as she wrestled with the oppressive air, the seductive voice still luring her closer. Each breath felt like a battle against a tide of dread crashing over her. The shadows pulsed in tempo with her heartbeat, the altar looming ahead like a malignant specter ready to swallow her whole. "Join us," they rasped, a sinister orchestra building to a cacophony that tore at the threads of her sanity. Focusing on the altar, she noticed a flicker in the dark fluid, a soft luminescence that beckoned her to step forward, to surrender to the tempting promises draped in sin. The knife slipped slightly in her grip, and her thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. What lay hidden here, waiting to be uncovered? Did she truly want to know the depths of its darkness? No, she shouted into the abyss, snapping her back to the moment. What if it was a trick? The truth could be another lie waiting to inject further poison into her family. If sensing her hesitation, the malevolence intensified. A surge of anger rippled through the gloom, and jagged laughter erupted, the shadows contorting further, revealing more twisted smiles as if savoring her struggle. "Dare you to refuse us?" A voice whined, taunting her, swirling with grotesque delight. "We can give you everything: power, knowledge, even your children's safety." Sarah's breath hitched. Thoughts of Lily and Ben wormed their way into her mind. Were they safe? Were they cold, hiding in bed, waiting for her while the dark seethed outside? The promises from the shadows wrapped around her, crushing her will like a vice. Surely they could save them. But at what cost? Her mind reeled. "Stop!" she roared defiantly, stepping back instinctively, pushing the shadows with the flame of the candle. The room shivered, the walls pulsating as if alive with the desperation of souls imprisoned in darkness. Moments stretched into eternity, her heart racing like a drum in a death march. "Foolish girl," the voices hissed in unison, their cadence rising as if they were growing stronger with her fear. "What you seek is only one step away. Join us, and all will be well." The candle flickered dangerously, casting wild shadows that seemed to reach for her. Suddenly, the fluid on the altar began to shimmer, drawing an outline that resembled a face she recognized. Jake's features twisted into a grotesque mask of despair and malice, his eyes darkened by shadows. Help me. His mouth formed the words, though the tone twisted into something hungry, something that gnawed at Sarah's insides, pulling at her resolve. You can save us, just give in. No. She screamed, her voice cracking. Desperation coiled tight in her chest. She had to find him, had to save him, not surrender to the very darkness that had taken him. But what could she do? The altar loomed, and the shadows writhed like serpents, closing in on her. She could feel their cold tendrils brushing against her skin, urging her to succumb. Panic surged through her. It was now or never. She had to break the spell cast by the malignancy surrounding her. Summoning every ounce of her will, she charged forward, blade raised high, driven by a singular thought. She could not let the darkness consume her, but the impact was immediate and violent. The moment the knife struck the altar, an ear-piercing wail erupted, shattering the air around her. The shadows shrieked as they recoiled, morphing into thick, cloying smoke that enveloped her like a dark shroud. You're mine. A voice roared, deeper than the others, wrapping around her like chains. Sarah staggered back, breathless, clutching the knife as if it were her last lifeline, and then everything went black. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Dread pooled inside her stomach. Where was she? Thick silence enveloped her, oppressive and suffocating. It drummed in her ears, a heartbeat against her own madness. With mounting terror, she whispered, "Jake?" But the only answer was a soft, guttural laugh that echoed through the void, an unnerving melody from somewhere deep within the shadows of her mind. What had she unleashed? What unspeakable truth now lay before her? The darkness deepened, and she knew she hadn't yet faced the true horrors lying in wait. What would she have to sacrifice to save those she loved? Where was she? The darkness pressed in like a wall, thick and heavy. It felt alive, pulsating with a rhythm that echoed her terror. Sarah reached tentatively into the obscurity, her fingers trembling. The air was cooler than she'd expect, sending a chill through her bones. She felt something hard and cold beneath her touch the altar. It returned to her, that foreboding presence, now more sinister than ever. "Jake?" She called again, voice cracking in the suffocating silence, but only the same low, mocking laughter responded, a taunt ripped from the depths of hell itself. It slithered around her, creeping beneath her skin, wrapping around her mind. She had to break free of the darkness, resist its call. This invisible force yearned to swallow her whole, to draw her into its depths. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, recalling the warmth of her children. The laughter of Lily bouncing off the walls of their home, Ben's mischievous grin rising in her memory like a ghost she couldn't let go of. "I will find you," she whispered fiercely, her voice trembling as she gathered her remaining strength. Something shifted in the shadows, a slight rustling as if the darkness was alive, eager to stifle her hope. The air tasted of ash and decay. Resolved, she finally opened her eyes, squinting into the void, straining against the impenetrable blackness that threatened to swallow her, and there it was, a glimmer. A flicker of light far off, a dim candle flame wavering like the pulse of someone still breathing. Instinct kicked in. She had to reach it. One faltering step turned into a frantic sprint, the knife clutched tightly in her hand. Each stride felt like an electric current coursing through her veins, pushing back against the suffocating atmosphere. As she raced toward the light, the laughter morphed into anguished screams, shrieking words that wrapped around her like barbed wire. "You cannot escape," they howled, echoing through the vast emptiness. "You belong to us." The fear she had tried to disregard clawed back at her. Sweat dripped from her brow as uncertainty pulsed like a drum, threatening to lead her into distraction. But she pressed on, driven by the images of her children and their faces, those lights of love pushing her forward against the pressing malevolence. Suddenly, a dark figure swirled into existence, blocking her path, a grotesque silhouette formed by the shadows. "Where do you think you're going?" It sneered, a familiar voice contorted beyond recognition. Sarah's heart stopped. "Jake?" No. It was wrong. The twisted features were his, but his eyes were hollow, pits of relentless night. "Jake!" she cried, reaching out, her instinct overriding her reason. Hands extended, she fought the urge to recoil. The figure took a step closer, an aura of icy despair enveloping her. "Help me," it rasped again, but it sounded like a trap woven with lies, echoing off the walls of darkness surrounding them. In that moment, the reality crashed around her. Not everything that whispered her name was a savior. "You're not him!" she yelled defiantly, backing away. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the clamoring terror that rippled through the shadows. "Join us," it hissed, the voice slithering into something malicious, writhing between her thoughts like a serpent. "Power will be yours. A family to rule the darkness." "No!" Sarah screamed, desperate to break free of the chains of desperation tightening around her soul. The knife trembled in her hand, but she had to make a choice. Sacrifice her sanity, risking everything for a chance to save her children, or find her strength and shatter this nightmare. Which will it be? The figure's smile twisted impossibly wider, showing teeth like knives. Sarah felt something inside her spark. There had to be a way to combat this evil. Summoning a ferocity she hadn't known existed, she raised the blade once more. "Not today!" she roared, charging forward with all the courage she could muster, but as she pressed on, the shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness crashing into her. Would the knife protect her? Would it save Jake? Or was she merely sealing her own fate? In that final blur, she saw the light flickering slightly brighter. Closer. Would it lead her to salvation, or more horror? The dark whispers intensified, wrapping her in their malevolent embrace. And then nothing. Just silence. What had she unleashed with her defiance? What would emerge from the dark depths already waiting for her? The void swallowed her whole, a suffocating blanket of silence and shadow. Sarah felt the knife slip from her fingers. An empty dread replaced her heartbeat, echoing in the vastness. Time lost meaning. Had she succumbed to despair? A tiny flicker of self-doubt seeped in, gnawing at her resolve. Then, something stirred beneath her. A whisper, soft but insistent, slithered through the darkness like a snake in the grass. "You should have joined me," it hissed. It was Jake's voice, the familiar lilt twisted by mocking edges. It sent chills racing down her spine, and she swallowed hard, panic rising. "Jake?" she croaked. It was a weak cry, swallowed instantly by the encroaching dark. No longer Jake, the voice echoed from all sides, no longer tethered to the figure she saw before. "I am your darkness. I am what you fear." She forced herself to breathe, to push away the tendrils of hopelessness that slithered into her mind. She remembered the light, that fleeting candle flicker she saw. It promised warmth, safety. What if she hadn't reached it in time? What if the light was gone forever? The silence pressed down, heavy and foreboding. She stood there, heart thudding, feeling trapped between despair and desperation. The laughter again rose, a cacophony of sounds that wrapped around her like a noose. There is no escape. Panic surged. She fought against focus slipping away, gathering the fragments of strength she had. "You're wrong." She screamed into the void, her voice trembling yet defiant. "I will find my children, and I will wake up from this." And then, a faint echo of light brushed against her skin, raising the hair on her arms. It was cold, like ice at first, but began to warm. She turned toward the sensation, the dim glow intensifying in her vision. Eyes narrowing, she pressed forward through the darkness, every ounce of willpower charging her like electricity, yet every step was a battle against the oppressive whispers pulling her back. Shadows danced around her, coiling around her legs, tugging, begging her to surrender. "You can't win." Selves lost in the dark, a chorus of shrieks cried, tangled and layered, striking at her thoughts from every direction, but her focus remained on the light. It grew larger, casting eerie shapes against the oppressive walls of blackness. Was it an illusion? A cruel trick? She stumbled forward, heart racing, instincts blaring alarms within her. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the shadows, a skeletal grip that clutched her wrist tightly. It was cold, almost burning against her skin. The face that emerged from the gloom was familiar yet horrifying. A wretched mask of despair resembling Jake, but twisted, drained of warmth and life. "Join me, love, give in," it rasped, fingers curling tighter, drawing her closer. "No!" she shrieked, ripping her arm away. Fear ignited fresh adrenaline. "You're not him." Her voice cut through the gloom. As she yanked herself back, she felt the ground shift underneath her. The darkness wailed, shrieks morphing into desperate pleas. Shadows intermingled, writhing, clawing to reclaim her. She stumbled backward, losing her footing, fear clawing at her mind. In that moment of vulnerability, the light flickered again, brighter and warmer than before. It felt alive. Heart racing, she leapt toward it, the shadows wailing in agony behind her, desperate to pull her back, and then she was through. Gasping, she stumbled into a cavern filled with blinding light, the warmth enveloping like a long-lost embrace. But the realization crashed down like ice water. Shadows still flickered at the edges, angry and howling. Had she really escaped, or was this another layer of the same nightmare? Her heart pounded in her chest as she scanned the bright space. Shadows were still hungry, still reaching. The light pulsed, and with it came the distant sound of children laughing. It echoed, clear and pure. "Lily. Ben." Her voice caught in her throat. Would this new light lead her to them, or into another trap? Every instinct screamed at her to run, to find her children, to grab hold of that laughter. But lurking in the back of her mind was the horrifying thought that Jake might not be so far behind. They were still there, in the dark, waiting for her. What would she find in the light? Or would it only lead her deeper into the shadows? The laughter grew louder, a siren song pulling her deeper into the bright cavern. It felt real, each note a thread weaving through her heart, binding her to hope. "Lily. Ben." She shouted again, desperation lacing her voice, echoing off the cavern walls, but the shadows kept creeping, curling around the edges of the light, biting at her heels. It felt like a relentless tide, drawn to her warmth, wanting to pull her back. "Stay focused," she whispered to herself, trembling as she edged forward. The laughter twisted, echoing mischievously, warping into dark melodies that made her skin crawl. She pushed through the swirling light, searching for her children. But every single step felt like stepping into quicksand, the joy of their laughter turning hollow, empty. "Where are you?" she cried, panic bubbling to the surface, and just like that, the warmth flickered. The edges of the cavern darkened, shadows sharpening into monstrous forms that crept closer, hungry and wild. A sickening chill cut through her. "Mom!" The soft call was almost drowned by the shrill whispers of the shadows. But it was real. Sarah's heart soared. "Lily?" With every ounce of strength, she charged ahead, the darkness clawing at her back, but the faint sound of her daughter's voice banishing some of the fear. "Help us." It was more urgent this time, her child's voice threading through the chaos. "Hold on. I'm coming." Sarah felt the pull of hope, a singular focus driving her forward. But just as she darted deeper, the shadows surged, a wall of darkness closing around her. "No!" she screamed. "I want to let you take me again." She stumbled, falling to her knees, hands gripping the cold floor. Breathing hard, she felt the weight of despair creeping back in. "Mom, please." The voice was closer now, just beyond reach. The shadows convulsed, flickering like flames, threatening to spill over into the light. "No." Taking a deep breath, Sarah clawed her way toward it once more, determined to reach her children. But the laughter morphed again, turning into a frantic, distorted cry. It echoed cruelty, her worst fears whispering vicious lies. "Join us, Sarah." She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I will find you," she screamed. The darkness quivered, ripples reaching her, but she pressed through, crawling closer. She could see figures now, hazy and indistinct, but the flicker of the light cut through the surrounding gloom. In an instant, the echoes shifted. The shadows shrieked, but they disintegrated in waves, howling with rage. "You belong to us." With renewed energy, she sprinted forward, every fiber of her being focused. She reached for the light, and suddenly, she was standing in a small clearing. The light engulfed her completely, bright and blinding, washing away the encroaching dark. A heartbeat of silence passed. And then she saw them. Lily and Ben. Their small figures illuminated under a radiant glow. But something felt wrong. Their smiles were wide, unnaturally so. The look in their eyes didn't match. "Mommy." They chimed in unison, their voices too sweet, too perfect. "Mommy, come play." It sent dread creeping back into her heart. She saw the shadows tucked behind them, slithering against the trees, hungry eyes reflecting the glowing light. A pit formed in her stomach as lengthened shadows stretched, clawing toward her children. "No! Get away from them!" But the moment crackled, a heavy weight crushing against her. The light flickered again, and the laughter twisted into screams. "Join us!" The shadow forms grew, revealing their true nature, grotesque and malicious. Sarah's heart raced. The imminent threat yanked at her as she dove toward her children. But she could already feel the dark hands reaching, closing in. Would she break through, or would she be swallowed whole once more? As she lunged forward, everything blurred, the boundary between light and darkness becoming uncertain. The laughter shifted into grating cries of despair, and she felt the shadows closing around her once more. What awaited her beyond the brink of this struggle? The line between hope and terror blurred, leaving only a dreadful question lingering in the air. The world flickered in and out, shadows closing in, gnashing their teeth. Sarah felt the chill wrap around her throat, squeezing tighter as her breath quickened. For a heartbeat, she was suspended in that terrorscape, light and dark sparring for dominance. "Mommy!" The voices of her children seemed to echo from a distant land as she burst forward, lungs burning, intent on breaking through the suffocating gloom. But just as she reached for them, the light dimmed again. It twisted and bent, casting grotesque shapes over the clearing figures that moved with a predatory grace, ready to pounce. The shadows wriggled eagerly, almost laughing at her desperation. "Join us!" They wailed, gaping mouths grinning wider than seemed possible, their features contorting in a macabre dance. "No!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "I'm not leaving you." But it felt more like a plea, a desperate confession of her own frailty. The children's backs were turned, their fragile forms lit by a halo that felt like a lie. With a lurch of determination, Sarah staggered towards them. The shadows moaned, a low, visceral sound that scraped against her ears. It was a chorus of the lost spirits claimed by darkness, echoing their sorrows. She reached out, fingertips grazing Lily's shoulder. A jolt surged through her, an electric pain like icy fire. The moment was shattered as Lily twisted, revealing eyes void of innocence, transformed into dark abysses. "Mommy, play forever with us." The impossibility of those words slammed into Sarah like a freight train. The benign playground imagined moments ago had morphed into a pit of despair. Beneath the surface, laughter mingled with cries, both beckoning and damning her. Ben's turn was equally dreadful. "Don't be scared, Mommy. We are happy here." Happiness? They didn't recognize the shadows creeping up their legs, wrapping around their tiny frames like leeches, pulling them into a never-ending void. "Let them go!" Sarah cried. The shadows shifted, weaving between the children's bodies, grasping tightly. With every second, the circle of light flickered, hesitating as the monsters closed ranks. She felt another surge of raw panic as she yanked both kids into an embrace, heart racing, brushing a finger across Lily's cheek. It was too cold, too lifeless. They weren't just lost in shadows, they were losing themselves, surrendering to that tainted laughter. The darkness pulsed, and with it came disorienting whispers, some familiar, others not. "Stay with us," it coaxed, the tone sweet and alluring. "No!" Sarah screamed. The depths of her fear erupted into fury. "You want to take them. I want to let you." It was like stirring a beehive. The shadows writhed, their laughter turning to shrieks as they lunged forward, angry at being denied their feast. Fists clenched tight, she held her children close, forcing their attention back to her. "We're getting out of here. Now." Then the ground shook beneath them, and with each quaking tremor, a new wave of shadow surged. They were rising, thick as smoke, eager to snatch her away. "Mommy!" The children screamed, but she could see the glimmer of fear now. A chasm of darkness opened beneath their feet, ready to swallow all. Sarah tightened her grip, eyes darting for an escape. What if she wasn't strong enough? Then, just as hope flickered, she noticed a shimmer in the distance. A doorway forming in the shadows, glowing faintly in contrast to the darkness surrounding them. It was a thread of light, beckoning her. Could it lead them to safety? Without hesitation, she started dragging them toward it, but the shadows surged, spitting venomous threats as they drew closer. "Join us, Sarah. Join your children." Their hands clawed at her back, fingers like ice trying to peel her away from her kids. But she fought not just for her children, but for herself. The doorway pulsed brighter. Could they make it? Or would the darkness collapse in, forever sealing them away? In a heartbeat, the choice lay before her. Leap toward the light, or surrender to the abyss. What would she do, save them, or lose everything? As she lunged, the shadows screamed, the darkness swirling, and she felt herself teetering on the edge of oblivion. What awaited her on the other side of that break? Would the truth shatter their already fragile world? Sarah's heart raced as she propelled herself toward the doorway of light, her children's hands firmly grasped in hers. The shadows shrieked, their angry wails echoing against the walls of darkness. "Join us!" they hissed, their cold fingers creeping up her arms, tugging at her strength. "No!" she cried, her voice rising in defiance. "I will not give in." The doorway pulsed with warmth, a beacon that promised safety if she could just reach it. Desperation clashed with fear like thunder in her chest. She sprinted, the ground trembling beneath their feet as she fought against the tide of darkness threatening to pull them away. With one last effort, she heaved forward, tossing her entire being into the light that in a flash, they were through. As they stumbled into the glow, warmth washed over them, dissolving the coldness that had clawed at their flesh. Sarah felt the shackles of the shadows lift slightly, yet a concern clawed at her heart. Would the light truly protect them? Her mind spun with uncertainty. A split second later, she turned, glancing back at the darkness as it roared and writhed in fury, shadows looming like beasts denied their meal. "Mommy?" Lily's voice broke through, and Sarah felt a wave of anxiety ebb slightly. Ben's small hand squeezed hers, reminding her of their fragile connection. "Yes. I'm here." Sarah reassured them, trying to push back the fear sprouting its ugly head again. They were safe at least for now. But what lay ahead? They were on an untrodden path beyond the veil they'd escaped. "Where are we?" Ben asked, his eyes wide, reflecting the glow around them. In that moment, Sarah saw it, a path stretching forward, lined with familiar trees and gleaming snow. Light poured from the sky like liquid gold, shimmering safety. I think we're home," she murmured, her voice thick with hope. "Is Daddy here?" Lily asked, her innocence threadbare with worry. The question hit like an ice pick, severing the tender bond of relief. "Jake. Where was he?" Sarah's heart sank, knowing she couldn't leave him behind. "Let us go and find him," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. they moved forward, the shadows behind them fading as they ventured deeper into the light. The world blended enchantment and familiarity, the essence of Willow Creek imbued into every gleaming flake of snow. Yet, an ever-present weight sat in her heart, fear still lingered. What if the shadows followed them? What if they hadn't truly escaped? As they walked, a distant sound caught her ears, a familiar voice carried in the wind. Sarah. It was Jake. Hope surged wildly inside her, igniting her spirit. Jake! She shouted, urgency fueling her steps. She pushed forward, dragging her children as they raced towards the sound of his voice. They rounded a bend, and there he stood, illuminated by the soft glow of warmth radiating from the home they shared. But the sight was bittersweet. He was alone, shadows dancing in the corners of his eyes as if they had not relinquished their grip on him. "Thank God you're safe," he exclaimed, arms wide open. Lily and Ben dashed forward, connecting with their father in a flurry of relief. Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes as she watched their reunion. But something inside her pulled tight. Jake's face was taut, strained, worn from the horrors they had faced. "Where are the shadows?" he asked, concern etched in his voice as he turned to Sarah, searching for answers. "We beat them, but I don't know for how long. We need to leave this place. We can't stay here," she urged, fear punctuating her words. The family turned and began to walk away from the darkness of the shack, but just as they left the threshold, a shiver gripped the air. An echo reverberated, slithering through the snow. "You can't leave us," the voice crooned, familiar and twisted. Not this time. They halted, the chill creeping back, whispering sweet betrayals. Panic ignited in Sarah's chest as she turned, eyes darting back toward the looming darkness dissipating behind them. "We have to keep going. Don't look back," she urged, just as dread spiraled to a deafening crescendo. But the shadows surged forward with renewed vigor, malevolent and loud. They crested around the family like a wave poised to crash. "Stay together," Jake shouted, eyes fierce. They stood united, but the shadows pressed hard, a frightening blend of laughter and anguish clawing at their sanity. Sarah clenched her fists. "Look! The light!" she shouted, pointing to a bright horizon forming in the distance, where warmth beckoned. Away from the darkness. Sarah pulled her family together, and with sheer desperation, they turned and ran, abandoning the shadows that howled and screamed behind them. Each step took them farther from the horrors they had faced, and as they sprinted through the swirling light, they began to feel the chains of fear melt away. Bursting into the brightness, they found themselves in an expansive grove, radiant rays pouring through the canopy above, illuminating a future devoid of shadows. The air shimmered with laughter, the sound of children playing, memories flooding back, unending bliss and warmth. In the distance, a snow-covered cabin glowed invitingly, flickers of yellow in the windows promising safety and warmth. But as they approached the cabin, the shadows halted at the edge of the grove, writhing but unable to persist beyond the light's reach. "We did it!" Ben shouted, joy cascading through them as they turned back to face the dark beings which had chained them so fiercely. Sarah's heart soared like a kite in the wind. She faced the shadows one last time. "You have no power here. We own this light." And with one final heart-stopping flourish, the family crossed the threshold of the cabin, leaving the shadows howling in agony as they were banished into obscurity. Inside the cabin, they breathed, releasing all the pain and torment that had clung so tightly to their hearts. Together. They were safe now, inside this haven. Together, they would weave a new tapestry, one of laughter, love, and resilience, where shadows could never haunt their lives again. It was over. But before the sun began to rise, a faint whisper echoed in the woods, a reminder lingering. "We will meet again." The fire crackled warmly as they gathered around, arms linked and hearts imbued with hope. They had confronted the dark, and though it had tried to take them, they had found the strength to fight back. So here they were, together, lighting a fire to banish the darkness that would never again take hold of their lives. As they stared into the flames, a sense of calm filled the room. A new chapter awaited them, one free of shadow, filled with the light of family. Now, if you enjoyed this journey and don't want to miss out on more thrilling stories, you need to subscribe now. Hit that bell for all notifications. This is the moment to show your support. Don't forget to smash that like button. Your thumbs up really helps feed the algorithm, and I want to hear from you. Flood the comments with your thoughts, your reactions, your theories about the ending. Let's get the conversation going. Finally, be sure to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans know how important it is to support the channel through these actions.